to Jason Wyatt, Shop Steward at Tata Steel in Talbot.
Good morning, comrades, and thank you very much. I am not a public speaker, so yeah, I'm an electrical engineer in the steel industry, so this isn't my sort of normal home. So firstly, I'd like to say a massive thank you for inviting me to be here today and to talk about my industry and our ongoing campaign fighting for a fairer transition to a green steel industry. As you heard in introductions earlier, I'm Jason Wyatt. I'm an electrical engineer in Port Talbot Hot Mill and a Unite the Union workplace rep. And I've been part of the steel industry for 25 years, since leaving school. I, like many of my colleagues, were congratulated in the first days of our employment on successfully achieving a job for life. I started in Lamworn Steelworks in 1999, and by the time I finished my apprenticeship 4 years later, in 2003, all the heavy end of Lamworn had gone. Ebervale Steelworks had closed altogether, and I, along with 30 of my apprenticeship year, were transferred down to Port Talbot Steelworks. Fast forward to today, and across the UK, we've seen cuts and closures in Ravenscraig, Redcar, Teesside, Rotherham, Scunthorpe, Port Talbot and Newport, just to name a few. Quite simply, our steel industry is under attack. And right now, we're standing at the precipice, and there are effectively two paths in front of us. On the one hand, we've got Tata and the Tories, their industrial vandalism, as we called it. And they're looking to directly decimate 2,800 livelihoods between Port Talbot and Llanwern, and around 10,000 more indirectly, whilst receiving £500 million in funding. And on the other hand is a fairer transition to electric arc furnace technology and investment to grow the whole UK steel industry, the green steel industry for the future. We've witnessed generations of degradation of industry in this country and the huge reduction of highly skilled and well-paid unionised jobs that have gone with it. All across the UK, all we've seen are cuts, particularly in heavy industry, coal mines, shipyards, automotives, steelworks as well. It's the same story over and over again. Communities across the UK, like the one I grew up in, have been left in destitution. Tata and our politicians talk of transition funds and support for affected people, businesses and communities. These same promises have been made to ex-mining communities and ex-steel communities before. Ebervale, I mentioned, just as one example, more than 20 years on from the closure of their steel industry, and they're still one of the most deprived communities in the country. The transition funds and investment either don't come to fruition or don't make a difference to the ordinary working class people like us in those areas. Steel is a foundation industry in the UK. It's been mentioned before. Whether we like it or not, steel plays a massive part in all our lives. The cars we drive, the knives and forks we use to eat, or the buildings, office blocks and factories we work in. They're all made using steel. But the steel market is changing, and our customers want to be able to sell their products with a badge saying made with green steel. For us in Port Talbot, it means transitioning to a format where steel is made using electric arc furnaces. Now, for clarity, we're not opposing the building of electric arc furnaces. The most important thing here, and what we as a workforce are opposing, is the way in which we transitioned to an electric arc furnace model. Port Talbot is the last bastion of heavy industry as it currently stands in South Wales. We've always been there. For over 100 years, we've absorbed some of the displaced workers of other industries that have gone around the area. But we really are the last bastion of heavy industry in South Wales. Where will we go is the question. We as a workforce have bent over backwards every time we've been called on by the business to save our industry. We've given up pay, we've given up bonuses, we've changed terms and conditions, and as recently as 2016, we gave up our pension scheme, with the government then changing the rules around final salary schemes to allow Tata to absolve themselves of all responsibility to the scheme and its members. Just that was worth more than £2 billion to Tata. Time and time again, we've answered the call as a workforce, and now we're being asked to pay for our future, for our kids' futures, with jobs, and it's not fair. We've heard stories in the media of the plant falling apart and of it being in an unsafe condition. This is only as a result of years of underinvestment by our owners and a managed decline of our assets. We've already seen the accelerated closure of our coke ovens. These were the last coke ovens in the UK. And right now, Tata are threatening that they could accelerate the closure of our blast furnaces and the rest of the heavy-end assets as a result of our industrial action. They plead poverty, publicising £1 million a day losses. But this is farcical. Tata Steel made £3 billion EBIT and £900 million net profits in 2022-23. It's got reserves of £1.6 billion and has paid out dividends of £1.4 billion between 2019 and 2023. Their revenue has grown by 47% in the last 5 years, and its holding company has described 2023 as its best year ever. They are a very rich company. We're fighting for a fair transition with a guarantee of no compulsory redundancies, and we will retain one blast furnace operation at least until the electric arc furnace is brought online. This would mean that we would not have to rely on imported steel from halfway around the world, steel that is still produced in blast furnaces, but where these furnaces are far more carbon intensive than ours. We would continue to be self-sufficient, and we would have a guaranteed steel supply for our hot mill and our downstream units, preserving jobs for the future and massively changing the numbers of redundancies we would see. This is a realistic and achievable ask. It is a transition that is a reality in the Chinese plant, in British Steel plant in Scunthorpe. It is a reality in the Tata plant in Annoesjka, and it's a reality in our competitors' plants across Europe. And whilst Tata are closing our blast furnaces, they're bringing them online in Annoesjka and in India. The difference in all these cases is the support from the owners or from the respective political powers. We are being failed by our owners and by our governments. And speaking of governments, the Tories promised Tata £500 million of our taxpayers' cash to build the electric arc furnace, but with no guarantees or commitments around jobs or futures. They have shown that they have absolutely no industrial strategy and no plan or vision for UK steel. When you consider that the total value of the UK steel industry is around £780 million, and the Labour Party have already pledged £3 billion, why wouldn't we take a stake in the UK steel industry? One swipe of a pen in Westminster can change procurement rules so that any UK infrastructure products using steel are made using UK steel. This alone will put billions back into the public purse. There are also opportunities around the Freeport area in Port Talbot, but we need more from our politicians. We need sure and definite policy as part of a comprehensive industrial strategy to be able to bring these businesses to the area and to retain the highly skilled and well-paid jobs and well-paid employment, around Port Talbot, and it needs to be now, not over the next 5 or 6 years. It'll be too late by then. Why aren't Tata listening to the Labour Party? Why aren't they considering the pledge of investment to the UK steel industry? Labour have openly told Tata many times not to make any irreversible decisions until after the general election. They've told them there is a better deal to do. We as reps met with some of the Labour Party MPs less than 2 weeks ago, where they reiterated the steel pledges to us and they reiterated their support for the steel industry. Why are Tata so hell-bent on pursuing this devastating plan? Every time we've made a proposal to the business, they've responded with threats. They've threatened to withhold pay, they've threatened to send workers home, they've threatened to close plant early, they've threatened dismissal, and they've tried to divide the workforce. They've tried to frighten the workforce, and they've tried to demoralise the workforce. But we are standing strong. Unite the Union members have been following an overtime ban and a work to rule since Tuesday morning. And already we're seeing the frustrations of the company as a result of this action across site. This is the first collective mass industrial action in the steel industry for over 40 years. And we are escalating. Yesterday afternoon, we served notice to the company of an all-out indefinite strike for Unite the Union members, starting on the 8th of July. We will not be bullied and pushed into submission by Tata's threats. We are standing and we are fighting for our industry, for our livelihoods, and for the livelihoods of the generations coming behind us. Because steel is part of the long-term green economy in this country. Whether it be in the floating offshore wind turbine platforms, the wind turbine bodies, green public transport infrastructure, the green buildings, offices and factories, ultimately the decisions lie with our politicians as to whether they want to support so that we can utilise the plant, the technology, the workforce and the materials available to us and make it ourselves here in the UK, or whether it's made somewhere else in the world and shipped into us. Because deindustrialisation is a political choice. It was a political choice in the 80s, and it's a political choice now. We've shown that there is an alternative. Our industry can and should be there as an opportunity for future generations, as it was there for me and my colleagues. We've shown that the market for green steel is set to grow massively in the coming years. We can and should be there to meet that demand. With proper industrial strategy and proper investment, we can grow the industry for the first time in generations. We can see more jobs, more prosperity and thriving communities, not the shells of communities left destitute that have been left across the UK as a result of deindustrialisation. Thank you. Solidarity to you all. Victory to the steelworkers and victory to the working class.